Hello, welcome to this episode of The Daily. My name is Brendan Malone. Well, last week the media was all abuzz with the fact that Helen Clark is being backed by John Key to become the next head of the United Nations. And it doesn't really matter what you think about that particular decision. There was a very strange phenomenon that began to go on in the media and in the public discussions and the online discussions about this issue. People were saying, I was going to say they were effectively saying, but they weren't. They were actually literally saying that we all should be backing Helen Clark for this job, and that if you don't back her and you're a New Zealander, there's something wrong with you, that you're just being too mean-spirited or you've allowed politics to get in the way, but that we should be all backing Helen Clark because she's one of us. She's a New Zealander, and we should want to see a fellow Kiwi get this top job. That is just the worst reasoning you could apply in this situation possible. A person should get a job, particularly a job like this, which has a huge amount of responsibilities that go with it. A person should get a job because they are the most qualified, or they are the person who is best suited or most appropriate to have that job. They shouldn't get the job just because they're a Kiwi, like I am. And I would feel exactly the same way if Richie McCaw was running for the head of the United Nations. I love Richie McCaw. I think he's a great rugby player, a great man, and he's done a lot of amazing things in this country with his public profile. But I wouldn't back him for the head of the United Nations because I actually don't think that he is the most qualified candidate. Regardless of the fact that he's a good man, he's a good rugby player, and he's a fellow Kiwi, I wouldn't be backing him just because he's a Kiwi. This is not an American Idol contest where you vote for the most popular. This is a very important and very serious role that someone needs to fill here. And it is ridiculous to engage in some sort of patriotic nepotism where we're saying, well, she's one of us, so she should get the job. The question is not, is she one of us? The question is she the most qualified for this role? And there's a couple of things that make me personally question whether or not Helen Clark is the right person for this job, which is why I am very hesitant to say, yay, I hope she gets the job. First of all, there was a report that came out back in 2013, I think it was from memory, which was just unflinching in its criticism of the UN department that she had been running for the previous 4 and a bit years. And the way in which that department was being run, the way in which it was not being well managed, that money was not being used and utilised well, and that goals were not being achieved in the department that she was responsible for. Now, that's a pretty important report, and it's a pretty important reason to question whether or not she's suitable to then take the next step up. Now, I don't know, to be fair, I don't know subsequently whether other reports have come out to show that in actual fact she has improved that situation, which might change, I guess, my view of that particular report. But the simple fact is I think that's a good enough reason to, at the very least, to ask questions. Secondly, I'm not convinced that you want a politician leading the United Nations. There's two types of people that can fill these sort of roles. There are the diplomats and there are the politicians. And Helen Clark most certainly is a politician. But I think at the United Nations, which requires a whole lot of intricate negotiation work and trying to bring really divergent parties together to come together and to work together and to sign agreements and to form a policy and other things, you don't want a politician, you need a diplomat. Diplomats know how to work the room. They know how to work people. They know how to negotiate well, have give and take and all the rest of it. But there's nothing really about Helen Clark's career that shows that diplomacy is one of her strong suits. Yeah, there are diplomatic moments involved in being a politician, being Prime Minister of a country, but while she was a politician, she very much was in that sort of political cut and thrust, real cutthroat sort of politics mode. And it was very evident in the way that she ran the Labour Party. It's no secret that she ran the Labour Party with a very, very tight and strong iron fist control of what was going on, which is why things held together under her tenure. As soon as she left, though, that party fell to bits. The reason being, she was no longer there to rule it with an iron fist and keep everyone in check. And as soon as she left, because it was so Helen Clark-centric as a party, the whole thing fell to bits. Now, that's not the mark of good leadership, by the way, because good leadership is about legacy and succession planning and what you leave behind you. And the party simply has not recovered since that point. It's been through multiple leaders. It has never managed to get even close to where it was. And it's a party that's just languishing in this very broken and dysfunctional state, even now, all these years later. So I would argue that you don't want that sort of leadership style to be happening at the United Nations. Instead, you want more of a diplomacy style of leadership, and I'm not convinced that Helen Clark is actually capable of that style of leadership. You certainly wouldn't want a situation, because the UN's got plenty of problems at the moment of its own, without having a leadership structure that was set up with this really strong iron fist pyramid type leadership model where everything was top down and effectively ruled over in a very strict and controlling way by one person. Because the simple fact is that when that one person moves on, and they will, everyone's tenure comes to an end at the UN eventually, the whole thing will be in real trouble at that point if you've set up a structure like that. So for me, I think there's some serious questions, but more importantly, if we're going to be supporting Helen Clark for this job, it should be because she is the right person, because she has the right qualifications, not simply because she's a fellow Kiwi. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow on The Daily.